Hi, I decided to go live to talk about all sorts of different topics, and I know it will take a few seconds or a minute or so for TikTok to start pushing my stream out. I hope my microphone works. We'll see about that in a minute. So I was thinking about a phenomenon that I've noticed is that in our time, when so many people are moving around to different countries, both as legal and illegal migrants, that you get this psychological confusion about what it means to be a national citizen. Basically, the idea of nationality has been watered down to an administrative, an administrative activity. Say you're a couple from Italy, you're married, right? And you move to Sweden and you have your child there. That child is Italian, ethnically Italian. It's not a Swedish child, but they will receive the passport, of course. Now, in the past, it was so that, just 50 years ago or so, before the age of mass immigration, you really could only get a Swedish passport when you were born of Swedish parents in Sweden, right? And so your national identity was almost the same thing as your ethnic identity. Basically, nationality was your blood. Now, in the age of mass immigration, everybody moving around for whatever reason, you get a real strange kind of confusion that I would say is a borderline mental health condition, where people move to London from wherever, right? And within 6 weeks, they start saying that they're a real British person now. Or when they get their passport, they say, now I'm a real British person, or their children are real British people. That's not how it works. I mean, what has happened is that the value of a national identity has been diminished basically to zero. National identities are, at this point, papier mache, paper mache fictions that don't really mean anything anymore. So that's okay in one way. I would say, okay, fine, this is the consequence of the mass immigration development, is that your national identity is no longer the same thing as your ethnic identity, your ethnic blood reality. So it's different now, but then let's call it something else. Let's call it, let's stop calling your nationality then. Let's make the distinction then between your ethnicity. Are you ethnically Swede, or ethnically Italian, or ethnically a Balkan person? And what is your country of residence? Just call it that. Call it your country of residence, and call the other thing your ethnic blood, right? And of course, they're not going to do that because they don't want to register your real ethnicity. They just want to pretend that if you're born in Sweden, you're a Swede. Right? I know a baboon from a zoo in the Netherlands. It must be a real Dutch person, right? Give him a passport. And so that's what I oppose. I oppose this idea that, you can just hand out nationalities, right? As though that makes you a person of this or that. If I move to Germany and I get a German passport, I'm not a German. I'm still a Dutch person living in Germany in that case, right? Doesn't make me a German. That's just weird. Even though I might pass for a German, I physically look German, right? But I'm not, I'm Dutch. And so ethnicity matters to me. Yet in our world of modern things going on, we pretend as though the old thing that you mean the word nation, nationality, nation comes from, natio means of shared birth. Right? And so we've taken a word that used to have a very profound meaning that was tied to your ethnicity and your blood, and we've turned it into something that is an administrative fiction, right? And so I don't support that. I don't believe we can just make Asian immigrants real British people by giving them a passport, nor that you can make me a real Chinese person by giving me a Chinese passport. That doesn't make me Chinese, To me, the distinction matters, but clearly to our globalist, nationalistic masters, it doesn't matter at all. I was a bit jealous today because I saw somebody on YouTube, they posted 2 videos and they got 100,000 subscribers. I've posted hundreds of videos to my YouTube and I have 1,200 subscribers now. But then on the other hand, here on TikTok, some of my videos go viral. One of my videos got more than 1 million views on someone else's account because they copied my video with some comment, right? And that one blew up. But the original video was reported, banned, and taken down. So that's how it goes. Sometimes I rely on my viewers to help promote my words, right? So, oh, let's see, I'm seeing your comments coming in now. Yeah, God bless, greetings from Finland. Okay, glad you're watching, you know. Hey, you really enjoyed learning about my book, Revival of the West, right? You was banned at 180,000 followers. Wow, okay, I never got that far. I think I got to 50,000 at some point. I don't know. My accounts get banned regularly. This one's already got a warning now. Why is it that they're very prideful yet very triggered when telling them that they're not European? Yeah, I don't know. I saw a video of an African man in Japan who was deported. They were going to deport him, and he freaked out. Like he was like mentally unhealthy after that. You saw a video of him going like doing really weird, nothing violent, but he was just really weird in his head. Because maybe they think that by moving somewhere you become that. And when you tell them that, no, you haven't, you've gotten a passport on paper, you have your country of residence is this and this, but that doesn't change your blood, it doesn't change your ethnicity, it doesn't change your face, it doesn't change anything about you. So that's the difference between intrinsic reality and extrinsic, inner and outer reality, right? Your inner reality, that's your blood, your DNA, whatever, your ancestry, your psychological ancestry, and so on, right? If you believe in Carl Jung, in the collective unconscious, you inherit that from your ancestors, right? Your ancestors, not everybody else's. And then in the outer world, all of a sudden, things become very fake, yeah. Yeah, they're in denial, yeah. Maybe they're in denial. And I get the point. People say, but what about the South Afrikaners in South Africa, right? They call themselves Africans. Yeah, but they founded their own country on empty land. South Africa, up to 800 miles land inward, was empty. Even the Khoisan didn't live there. So it would be very different. Say black people from Africa move to an empty space in northern Finland, and they build up their own cities and their own nation there, and they get recognized by the United Nations, then they can say they are North Eurasians because they have their own country there. But by moving to Helsinki, that doesn't make you Finnish, you know? That's the weird part about people thinking that by migrating, they somehow transform into a different person. And so that's why I mentioned that this starts to look like a mental health condition where people are deeply dissatisfied with themselves. They see themselves as inferior, and you think, if I would only get into London, if I only get into, Tokyo, then I become a person who is more valuable. That's not true. You don't change at all. Your value doesn't change, and in all likelihood, you weren't inferior to begin with, but maybe you thought so, and that's why I say it's a mental health problem, I'm in Europe, Western Europe. Greetings from Croatia, yeah. The word deracinated comes to mind, okay. My English vocabulary is pretty big, but I'm gonna have to look up deracinated. Deracinated, yeah. Man, we need to use words that have the original meaning. Yes, that's it. We need to use words with the original meaning, but you can go farther back, right? Like I used to call myself an ethno-nationalist until I realized that the word nationalism comes from natio, people having shared birth. So you don't need to use the prefix ethno. You can just say nationalist. I'm just nationalist, and that means basically ethno, right? But of course, the word nation nowadays has a double meaning as state, country. And so that is because in Europe, see, the USA was basically an artificial country made up of many different peoples to begin with. But the European nations grew out of the earlier tribes that existed before we had nations. the nation states in Europe evolved out of tribal peoples, right? Like France came from the Frankish people, the Frankish Germanic tribe. Germany had several Germanic tribes, but they became one whole, right? And so on and so forth. So a lot of these nation states grew out of the tribal configurations. And so that's why nationality, in Europe at least, officially or originally, has more to do with your ethnic blood than with some administrative paragraph, right? Right, that's, yeah. So what do you think will happen before the American elections in November? I don't know, maybe more if Trump does well in the ratings, he risks more assassination attempts. It's weird that they only talk about what might actually happen. Is that the Secret Service tried to assassinate him. But nobody talks about that, not even Trump himself, maybe because nobody would believe him, right? But it's very obvious that Thomas Crooks was a patsy, and there was another shooter, a second shooter, because there was a window overlooking where they found the roof, overlooking the roof where they found Thomas Crooks. That window, there was a sniper there. It was actually boarded up during the Trump speech, and so there was a sniper there looking through a little peephole. And I believe that sniper is the one who shot at Trump. And Thomas Crooks probably didn't even know that there was going to be a real shooting. They just killed him, so he couldn't tell, right? I get the impression that Thomas Crooks was part of a Secret Service operation where he was playing assassin, right? So that he thought it was a training exercise. That's what I think, right? So this is my assumption. I think Thomas Crooks thought he was participating in a training exercise to test the Secret Service, ability to detect him. And he didn't know that they were going to use him as a patsy and that he was going to get killed. I don't think he knew that. No. That's what I think happened, you know? Yeah, they're not rooted in the land, exactly, right? If white people broke away to found our own land, what do you think our governing system would be? I think, considering that most political systems that you know of were invented by white people, except for despotism, we might try many different things, I like the Prussian socialism of Otto von Bismarck, for example, where basically it's National Socialism, but Prussian. So the idea is you have your own people and you take care of your own people. And you're not so much bothered with what other people are doing. You definitely don't believe that it's our job to take care of the world. We're not the world's parents. We would regard the world as a collection of adults who can have children. And we are just one group of such adults, our own nations. We would have several nations probably as white people. Not one, but several, right? And then we would have our own conflicts. We will accept there will be conflicts. We'll accept there will be problems. That's normal, but we'll just deal with those. I find it absurd that people seem to think that white people don't have the right to be themselves anymore. Of course we have the right to be themselves. Right, if a dog was born in a stable, it doesn't make it a horse yet. Right. Hold on. So, yeah, Trump is a Zionist. Yeah, I think Trump's friends are definitely all Zionists. Yeah, he's heavily funded by Zionists. I don't support that. I like the man Trump. Trump the man is a great guy, but I don't like that in order for him to win the presidency, he has to befriend the Zionists. He has to get J.D. Vance as his vice president. Yeah. I would never want to be in that kind of position where I have to constantly lie about everything just to win a competition or something. I would always strive to be more genuine. That's why through my speaking, I can be very blunt sometimes and very open, but it's best for me to go down this track. So it would be hard for me to be a politician if I had to then serve certain interests to win the election, right? I would not be my genuine self anymore. I don't think I could do that. I do still think that Trump is a better candidate than Kamala Harris. That would be awful. I think the people backing her are just pure evil. They hate men, they hate children. No. Yeah, Thomas Crooks, yeah. Right, I think half of Americans, half of eligible voters in the USA don't even vote, right? It's always like 50% that votes or something. And maybe that's why they need to make it such a show to pretend that their democracy, that the elections still have any valid outcome, right? Now this is my English channel, so I'll speak in English over here. I don't speak Dutch here. I haven't made many videos in Dutch recently because I'm just focusing on the English channel. I get a lot more interaction on it. Dutch people, my own Dutch people, don't seem to like me very much. I get, at least I think the ratio of hate I get from my Dutch videos is maybe I get 5 to 10 times more hate per comment or so than on my English channel. Yeah, so maybe I'm a bit less motivated to produce content for the Dutch people. If they don't appreciate it that much, then I'll just focus on what works best for me, right? Yeah, I made a video about the Paris Olympic. It's on my channel here. It's got 100,000 views or so. I explained basically that I thought it was a satanic ritual, and that this is led by people who are abused. They are abusive people who must have been abused themselves. That's what I spoke about. I don't see leaders like Macron, like President Macron of France. I don't see them as our leaders. They do not represent our culture. And I think there might be an opportunity here, I hope so, for a rift. That these weird ass leaders, like also Jill Biden, the wife of Joe Biden, praising this, Kamala Harris praised the opening ceremony, all these upper class elite political people, they all praised the opening ceremony, but the ordinary people, they were like shocked, like what the hell is this, you know? And I think most normal people, normies, didn't like it. It was awful, right? It was shocking, it was disgusting, it was offensive, right? And then here you see that opportunity for a rift where the leaders in their elite circles get it so wrong, they think that the people will want to live in this transgenderized world. I don't think people will ever accept that, normie people. Maybe 1%, maybe 5%, maybe 10%, but never more than that. The majority of normal people want to have houses and families. This is how they live. They live as families. You can't take that away from them and mangle all their children's genitals and make children, castrate a whole generation of people and pretend as though this is the future. You got it really dead wrong if this is how they do it, you know? Right. Trump 2016, yeah, that was like, yeah, I really liked the guy back then, yeah. What do you think about the situation around the world in this particular moment? Where things are going right now is I see big empires turning into termite colonies, you know? Meaning that they will want to do away with men, the male sex, they don't like it. They want to create a gender neutral society, basically women only, infertile women, and maybe breed children in incubation factories from these technological wombs. Have you seen that? They've created artificial wombs where they hope to start breeding children, right? That's what they're thinking of. But again, there's going to be a rift between the people who want that, who are actually a minority, and the majority of the people who will always be appalled by things like that, you know? By the way, I also don't really understand. Oh, this is a good comment, yeah. So in reference to Dutch people not liking my content that much, maybe Dutch people are more of a product of urban culture. That's absolutely true, right? All right. Is the connection off? No, I'm fine. I got 5G connection, so it's fine here. Yeah, Dutch people hate it when you stand out there. Do you feel Russia's against this? Well, the Russian culture is more religious, and so the Russian people of Western Russian definitely, yeah, I think it's obvious that they really oppose this sickness. They're just laughing at us, and I think they're right. They're right to laugh at this degenerate stuff, man. All right, so the men, they want to emasculate, yeah. They just want to turn everything into a termite colony and basically do away with the male sex. That's the feminist radical vision. That's why, you know, I don't get it. When they talk about right-wing and nationalism and so on, they always say that right-wingers are the ones who hate women. I don't get that. I find that appalling. The way I see it is that feminism does not support women. Feminism is a harmful ideology that harms women, because what women want is proper housing so they can have a family. And what does feminism want? Feminism wants to take women's children away and let the state or the government raise their children, right? So that women have nothing to do during the day, and then they are basically told to be a sterile cat lady. It's feminism that does that. You know, J.D. Vance made this remark, calling women childless cat ladies, but it's actually feminism that does that to women. But women don't want that. The majority of women don't want that. So yeah, have there been lots of attacks in the UK? I heard about some of them, but you know, the thing is they don't mention who did it, right? They just tell you a man did something, right? Yeah, many Dutch people are moving to rural Sweden here. The Netherlands is a big city at this point. It's overpopulated, like extremely overpopulated. During our so-called golden age, we had less than 2 million people living in that territory. And now we have almost 18 million people. That's 9 times as many as during the golden age. But it's overcrowded. Every patch of land is in use. There's no free land anymore. The only reason why they don't build houses somewhere is because the soil is too soft, and the houses might start sinking into the soil. So they're limited by that problem. But other than that, every part is built. It's industrialized, urbanized to the max. I'm from the Netherlands. Yeah, I am on Twitter at JohannesMKX. Yeah, right-wing men want to be dominant, yeah. But dominant is still different from domineering. It really doesn't mean that you're micromanaging. A dominant person doesn't micromanage. A dominant person trusts people, right? J.D. Vance is the vice president pick for Donald Trump. Yeah, Rotterdam is more than 50% migrant now. You know, I went to Rotterdam recently, maybe a month or two ago. I was in Rotterdam. And I went to some restaurant to eat something, and the people serving me there were from Ukraine. They were Ukrainian refugees who got a job, which is okay, great that they got a job, but they couldn't speak Dutch very well. They could speak a few words of Dutch. And the problem is then I can no longer have a small talk conversation with them because they don't understand me anymore, right? And they can't do it in English because they also didn't speak English. So that's the thing here, is that language is probably the most important social glue that exists. If you can't talk to each other, people don't talk to each other. That's the end of social relations. And so my number one problem with immigrants is that, you know, you can't speak the language, right? I'm also guilty of this. I've lived in several countries. It took me a while. I used to live in Germany, and it took me a while, maybe a year or two, before I could finally speak German well enough, right? But in the end, I did have like actual local German friends. It's not like I only had international friends. I made German friends, right? And so language is the hardest part of mass migration. Look at a place like London. Think of all the people who cannot talk to each other. How is that beneficial? You don't want that. You wish you would have a society where the majority of people can understand each other, but in London, the majority of people cannot understand each other. Same now in Rotterdam, Amsterdam, it becomes a majority of people who can no longer communicate with each other because they don't speak each other's languages, you know? Oh, you moved from Rotterdam, right? Great. Small town in Friesland. At least housing is cheap there still, right? Oh, I'm browsing through all of your no parking tickets, okay. Oh, what would you suggest we do to prepare for the societal collapse? I always say the same thing, move to the countryside and then move further, closer to nature if you can go off the grid. But it comes with a cost. You have to let go of certain modernity things, certain modern amenities, right? You have to let go of that. I don't believe that the urban world is going to survive in the long term. It's going to collapse like the Tower of Babel. And so I think the people who are now looking to escape the big cities, eventually in the long term are going to have the advantage. They will survive into the 21st, 22nd centuries, right? Wow, that's really cheap for the Netherlands. A farmhouse for 110,000 euros. Wow, amazing. What's a carper? I don't know what carper is, but that's okay. You know, in my dream world, in the River Rhine, when it was clean, before industrialism, the Atlantic salmon used to swim up the River Rhine to lay its eggs. And it no longer does that because the River Rhine is so polluted that the salmon no longer swims up the Rhine. I would like to clean up the Rhine River and make the Rhine River so clean that the salmon wants to come back. Okay, but now we have dams. We have too many dams in the Rhine as well. So we need fish ports so that the fish can swim up the river, all right? I would like the salmon to return. I would like to clean things up so much in Europe that the Rhine and the Danube become our healthy water lungs, so to speak. I care a lot about the climate. You know, I could be a member of the Green Party if it was actually about doing something for nature. So I would support things like the World Nature Fund and so on. I support preserving forests. I get really hurt when I walk through a forest and I see that they've cut down a bunch of trees to thin out the forest, right? And you see those logs lying there and I'm thinking like, God damn it, you know, somebody needs to protect the forest. That's how I feel about things like that. All right. But it's easier to call me a Nazi, right? Because if I want to preserve forests in Europe, that means we cannot build as many homes for migrants, so I must be a Nazi, right? So this is how they reason. It's so weird. And then they plant 8 trees on a street in Amsterdam, and then they are green. They are good and green, right? And I'm a Nazi because I want to protect the forests, okay? Yeah, Europe is owned by corporations, right? But it shouldn't be. Europe is overpopulated. Look, we have, if you look at the white Europeans, we have aging demographics, which is a good thing because it's normal. It's normal that a large group of people is being phased out, and then the people left behind should have it easier. They should have more room, more space. They wouldn't have to work so hard anymore. They could literally inherit a positive future. But then you have to keep the borders closed. If you do your aging demographic thing where the old people, the old generations die out, but then you open the borders and you mass migrate people in, you know, they always said in Europe that we need immigration to pay for the pensions or something, right? And what's happening now is that half of the migrants who came to Europe are not working, they're living off of benefits. Half of the migrants in Germany live off of benefits. that means they can no longer afford pensions for the old people because they have to pay welfare to the younger migrants who aren't working. And that is just catastrophic. That is just what they call in German Volkstod, the death of a people, people death. What did I go to school for? I studied management studies at university. In Estonia, you had a human chain recently to protect the forest, but corporations just took it down in the night. I don't know. No, I don't know if it's lagging. I'm just running behind on your comments. So do you advocate for the Netherlands to leave the EU like Britain did? Not alone. The Netherlands would leave with the Northern European countries, the Germanic countries basically. We should exit the EU and then have our own independent union. It doesn't have to be called a union. It can be something else like an organization or whatever. And so that we can then deal with the US, deal with Russia, deal with China on our own terms. That would be best for us because then we can work with the Northern Sea route, which is also past Norway, Sweden and Finland. And we would do trade with China. It would be fine. We would just work with Russia, work with China, work with the USA, but no longer be dominated by the USA, not be told by the US what to do anymore. People are dumb. They think university means knowledgeable of things. Yeah. Immigration will lead to civil war. Yeah, I think so. Cameras in people's home for control, maybe. Yeah. So the number one reason why I don't like my own country, the Netherlands, is because it's overpopulated. I used to live in Amsterdam for a few years. I felt suffocating. I felt really suffocating, you know. Oh no, in Croatia they import workers from India and Nepal. Yeah, they're doing that in Poland as well. It's just insane. This needs to stop. The idea that we need to keep the economy growing is wrong. You're going to have to accept economic degrowth. I was always surprised why degrowth apparently is a left-wing concept, because I went to one of these degrowth meetups and it was all left-wing socialist people, but I'm very far-right person and I support degrowth too. Because I'm not corporate right, I'm not with the big business right wing. I'm with, you know, the culture, ethnic culture right wing. And that's just a very different aspect of it. I care very much about, you know, creating room and space and fresh air and clean water for the future generations. And that means we accept aging demographics. The baby boomer generation is going to go away. And then we would have space and time to do what we want to do again. We could focus on culture and religion and so on, right? And that's what I feel is very important. Yeah. Let's see, how long have I been talking now? Oh, it's just half an hour. Okay, I'll do another half an hour. Hold on. What future do I see for the Netherlands? Sadly, it has become an urbanized zone. The question is, what will happen to it in the future? There are some scenarios it might drown, since the Netherlands, the urban part of the Netherlands is literally built below sea level. If the dikes breach, it might drown. And otherwise, they're going to keep doing this. As long as the corporate people are in charge of the Netherlands, they will keep building more homes, higher towers, taller towers, residential towers. It's going to be overpopulated. It's just going to continue doing what it's doing. That means it's only going to get worse, in my view. They want to turn it into like the New York City of the North Sea, right? I think it's horrible. Right, I mentioned that. Yeah, ideally the subarctic is good for the white man because it's our natural environment. Yeah, I say where the birch trees grow. Wherever the birch trees grow is kind of our climate, right? The birch trees grow from Europe, Northern Europe, all the way to the Ural Mountains and Siberia and so on. That whole stretch of northwestern Eurasia is our natural homeland for our race of people. And so, yeah, I am thinking of doing many things. Of course, I want to have the cultural counter-revolution in Europe to fight back against leftism, diversity, feminism, all these bad things that are harming us. But also to look further, like what if we move some of our people, 1 million or so, to the subarctic regions and let them found new nations like Orania in South Africa? You know, we need to keep doing that kind of things. What else can we do, you know? You can also think of a caste system in Europe so that the white people will be the top caste, like in India. India has a caste system, nobody complains about it. Then we can have a caste system in Europe too, right? And we put ourselves on top, right? And the migrants would be in the lower caste. You know, they do it in India, like I said, you know. And an ice age is a possibility, yeah. That is actually also real, yeah. What Dutch interest is in conflict with Russia? The Dutch people, the Dutch corporations, I think, are heavily invested in the US economy. So they have to do what the US wants. All right. Oh, many Americans have moved to Russia and have YouTube channels there. I must have seen one. I saw somebody on TikTok who did that, yeah. Well, Russia has a lot of space, so technically they should have a lot of very fertile land where you can start doing your off-the-grid agriculture or pastoralism and start doing something useful with your life, right? Though I have to tell you, I don't know much about Russia so much. I don't really know much about it. I should study it more. Is there a way for a Dutch future to get back to peace with Russia? Yeah, only if Germany does it. Germany, as the big economy of Europe, needs to cut loose from NATO, basically, and then work with Russia. I think that would be best for Germans, for the German future, but I don't know if the Americans will allow it. They would go to war with Germany. Right, yeah, it's confusing here. Yeah, confused and scared about the future here. Yeah, it is weird, isn't it? Right. What is happening now in this World War III scenario is going to be everyone against everyone. Japan fighting Russia. South Korea fighting China, Australia fighting China, Pakistan fighting Iran, India fighting China, right? And Europeans fighting Russia. And it's all so crazy, so fucked up. There is this overclass in the USA, who the CIA basically and the families that kind of run it. And they own all the big corporations, like Amazon with Jeff Bezos was actually founded by the CIA. Elon Musk's SpaceX was also founded by the CIA, right? Facebook was founded by the CIA, or meaning the CIA invests in these companies because the CIA controls the printing presses, so they can print infinite money, right? So they can invest in these companies with fake money. And that class of people who lives behind the shadows, behind the smoke screen, they just want to stay in power. They just want to have power over the whole world, and they will plunge the whole world into a third world war, killing hundreds of millions and then maybe billions in famines just to stay in power. This is how psychotic they are. They're just not human in this sense. No, I don't think the Dutch PVV party will do anything about immigration, though. Right, so how would we survive in the subarctic if we cut loose, right? How do we defend ourselves? With patience, I think if you start small communities and you grow them, because you're going to have a lot of children there, right? 7 children per woman, right? Then I think if you play it with patience and you focus on your competence and your skills, eventually you just break free. That's the idea. I don't think the United States empire will survive this century, but we just have to be patient. On another topic, I was thinking, it's a really strange thought, but every decision you make in your life leads to your death. There's no way to avoid death, so every decision you make leads to death. And the question then is, how will you die? And what do you want it to be like? And then you can start thinking about, how you want your end of life to be. And I don't want to be 80 or 90 years old, living in a super diverse big city. I want to live in a small rural community. In my final years, I wish I could live far away from urbanization, in a small community somewhere with some people around who I trust and care about, That's probably most important. And I would care a lot more about having the time to write and speak. I don't know how my voice will be when I'm 90 years old, but I would definitely like to write poetry. I would like to write books at that age because I have ideas for many books. I would like to leave all my thoughts behind in books, right? That would be very important to me. And I wouldn't want to be a part of some urban industrial complex that just only cares about profit, What do you think about the immigrants? Well, there's way too many. It's a bad idea. We're basically replacing ourselves, throwing ourselves and our future and our past away for what? So that corporations can keep making money. Unfathomable, really. I think I'm an ethno-nationalist, but I just mentioned earlier, I would just say nationalist, because the word natio means of shared birth. So I mean it in that original sense. In the Netherlands, aren't we too passive, letting corporations do what they want? Yeah, probably. But in the Netherlands, it's time to say stop. The economy needs to stop growing. You're done. You can only make it worse at this point. You should focus on, instead of chasing the farmers out and then building asylum housing on their land, maybe you keep the asylum seekers out and accept that you're done. The nation is full. It's full of people, too full of people. All right, let's see. All right, I've been speaking for 45 minutes. I'll do another 15 minutes to make it an hour. I usually speak for an hour because then my voice starts to crack up a little bit. Yeah, we have no leadership in the Netherlands. So who's really in charge of the Netherlands? It's that basically the intelligence community, the Secret Service are really in charge. But the Secret Service, I found out, who do you think Secret Services really work for? They work for the central banks, and the central banks are basically controlled by several very wealthy families. So it's basically, imagine it this way, it's the super rich families of the Netherlands who own the central bank, and they have the Secret Service work for them to secure their interests against the will of the people. That's basically a crime, but that's how it is. So it's a mafia. It's the billionaire mafia. Yeah, definitely. It's definitely a mafia. They want nothing but economic growth at all cost, but they don't care about our culture, our language. Everything has to be destroyed. They don't care about our traditions. Nothing matters to them. Because upholding your culture and your traditions is a cost. It's costly to do these things. It costs money. You have to spend money to defend your cultural life. And I'm not saying that culture is static. Culture is dynamic, but it changes from within, not from pressures from without, you know? The Glafia, exactly, global mafia, yeah. I think most of these Dutch families are Dutch indeed, but they don't always live in the Netherlands. I know at least one family lives in Switzerland, so they don't even live in the Netherlands, but yeah. Totally agree, yeah. What's your opinion on the cold versus the heat? I don't know. I just deal with it every day. Has the European Union had a hero the latest years? Was there a hero? Maybe it's Viktor Orban of Hungary, right? He's the only one going against the grain. Lots of people are struggling, right? You wonder if the upper elites really believe in the occultist stuff. Yeah, they do. As a means of power. I think that's their religion. Their religion is very different. They really believe in the occult stuff, yeah. Yeah, well, English is the international language the way Latin was once Europe's governing language, and that's just how it is. It makes sense that you need to have some language that you can communicate with others worldwide with, right? It just happens to be so. I suppose Spanish is the second, right? Or maybe it's Chinese and then Spanish, right? But Chinese is really only spoken by Chinese people, not so much by others, right? What's the way back from all this? Yeah, like I said earlier, I think we need to accept that we in the West, we have aging demographics. But if we allow the older generations to die out, then the young will inherit new space to live. But then we have to keep the borders closed, and we're not doing that, and that is really problematic. It's a really big problem. Yeah, the occult stuff is so bizarre, yeah. I think I read some books about the occult, and I think the upper classes, you know, they really do believe in satanic rituals, what we would call satanic rituals, yeah. I think they try to manifest things that way. It's really bizarre. It's possible that the ruling classes are effectively psychopaths, yeah. I call them psychopathic billionaires, or billionaire psychopaths who just don't care. They just don't care about us. They see us as cattle, all right? Words are spells, yeah. I was reading books by Martin Heidegger about language, and it's really profound, yeah. He said something that language speaks, right? And basically, silent moments are when you understand what was said. I thought that was very, very clever insight, yeah. I've been really practicing my own cadence, speaking my videos on TikTok. For example, when I started, I would be speaking like this very quickly without breaks, right? And now I put some breaks in there so that people can hear what I said. And that's very important. The pauses, the silence is when people understand what you've just told them. So that's very important to give people pauses in your speech. They will be more, your communication will be much more effective if you put in pauses, right? So I'm learning more about speaking and learning more about cadence, yeah, and pauses and silence. Exactly. I'm learning more about how to be a real great orator. Right? I would not say I'm talented, but I will say that I'm willing to do a lot of work for it. Yeah. Right. Yeah, an interrupter. Yeah. Exactly. Yeah. I see what you mean. Yeah. Right. Yeah, you think I'm a good speaker? Thanks. That's nice to hear. Yeah, I've been doing speaking for the past 5 years now, since 2019. I decided to start speaking. I've tried many different approaches, and I'll just do whatever works, you know. At first, I remember it was very hard. I would get on my mountain bike and I would ride into the woods of the Netherlands somewhere, and I would force myself. I had a little voice recorder. I would hold it in my hand. I would just force myself to speak for an hour by myself in the forest. Because I couldn't do it, I could speak for a little bit, and then I had nothing to say, you know. And I started forcing myself, just do it, fill an hour with words. And it was so difficult at first. But now I'm doing live streams and I seem to be able to do it now. So now I can speak to you for an hour, have things to say, come up with new things. Yeah, it's very interesting. Yeah. I heard about stabbings in the UK. Yeah, kids were stabbed, right? And many teenagers were wounded. It's insane, man. The knife crime in London. But we also know statistically who's doing it, right? There's this group of people who are like 13 or 14% of the population, but they are 70% of the knife criminals and 70% of the victims. Basically, they're harming each other, but we don't want to talk about it, you know, because it's racist, right? You're scared for your country in the UK, yeah? I think we all feel that way in all of Europe, in all the Western world, because it seems like we're not in charge of our future anymore. And that's why I keep speaking. We really want to do something about that, yeah? We're going to put ourselves back in charge, and it may mean many different things, that we could, you know, get out and start over, or we fight back, or we do both. I say we do both. We try both strategies. Like, we move some people out to start over, but we also fight back in a sort of counter-revolution. At minimum, we want to bring back a sort of moral sanity that is completely lost nowadays. If you've seen the Olympic Games opening ceremony, you know what I mean, right? It's totally satanic. The whole culture is satanic right now. We gotta do away with that. And people need to understand that the people who support that satanic nonsense are not our leaders. We don't have to listen to them anymore. They've disqualified themselves, you know. You don't get to stay in power when you literally harm people, your own people, like over and over again. You harm people psychologically over and over again. You know, this is not the way forward. The immigrations in Europe started in the 1960s, 1950s and 60s, and it accelerated in the 1990s. And now it got even worse. Now it's blowing up. It's totally insane. Yeah. Yeah. We're going to do something about something there. Going to push back, find new ways. In the end, we decide our future. No one else does. Yeah, I grew up in the 1980s in the Netherlands, and although we were not wealthy people, we were probably relatively poor. The summers were perfect, you know. We could do whatever we wanted. Play outside with our skateboards and our whatever, you know. We could do whatever we wanted with our little second-hand BMX bicycles, you know. There was nothing to be afraid of in the 1980s, but now, place is shit, you know. Someone else, yeah, we're all from the 80s. Yeah, the children were stabbed, right, in Southport. It's just insane. Like, something needs to be done. They just let it happen, and then they don't want to. They refuse to talk about it because it's racist. You know? Same thing in Ireland, really. Places going to the dogs. Yeah. Yeah, no problem. Thanks for sharing, right? Good times, yeah. Yeah, I'm Dutch. Let's see. All right, I've been speaking for almost an hour. I'll answer some more questions if there are any, and I'll wrap it up. Yeah, capitalism doesn't work, right? partly because capitalism wants to maximize the population. They don't like it if people stabilize. They don't want to see, say a country like the Netherlands had 10 million people and stay that way. They don't want that. They want to go to 20 million and then 30 million, right? They're pushing for more and more growth, even though it's unnatural to keep growing. How do we deal with rogue government in Ireland? The unhinged Prime Minister. You know, all your political leaders are appointed by far more powerful people, and they serve, you know, the upper interests. They don't listen to the bottom. Yeah, tri-state city. They want to turn the Netherlands into a tri-state city of 30 million people. That's just like totally filled to the brim with housing. Yeah, I like Donald Trump, the man, but I don't like that he has all these Zionist friends and Zionist financiers. Sadly, I still think it would be better than Kamala Harris, because she's pure evil. The people backing her are pure evil. Kamala Harris would just castrate children, you know? Whatever. All right, I'm going to repost this video to my YouTube channel later. My YouTube channel is also at The Great Johannes. And you can also subscribe to my newsletter, Substack newsletter at www.jmk.info, my initials.info. And beyond that, you know, I will talk to you soon sometime, because I'm going to wrap it up now. I've been speaking for almost an hour. Thank you for watching, thank you for following, and you will see a new video of mine on my English channel once a day. I'll do one a day. I usually go for a walk and I think about what's been going on that day, and I try to see the big picture. I always try to look for the big picture, and then I write about partly emotional feeling, but also partly like rational logic. I put that together and say, okay, what if this is it, you know? And then I just speak it. I'm sometimes wrong. I'm not the sort of person who needs to be right all the time, but I definitely feel I'm getting close to the truth out there, and people appreciate that, right? So thank you for watching, and until next time.